This is it? Okay. Who's ready to be disappointed? Any second now? Oh, yeah. Any time travelers in chat? God, I fucking miss the time travel meta. Runeterra is in turmoil. Hang on 1 second. You guys are right. It is up. Wait a second. This is it. It's not loading. Hang on. Wait.
Some call me a prophet, a magician,
Wait.
a mad old hermit. But my eyes have never deceived me.
Okay.
And what I observe troubles me.
Getting Zilien first. I like it.
I see the same mistakes time and again.
Oh, it's like Avatar. Oh, the Fire Nation.
But time, like so many things, is a construct, a convention of those who fear... No, confound it. Where was I? Ah, yes. The convention of those who fear their fate and endeavor to bury the past. But here's the secret. Fate is also an illusion. Should you find yourself in despair, the solution is simple. Pick another fate.
I mean, that's easy to say for someone who goes back in time.
Who choose
Like,
their outcome, not those who let it choose them.
oh, so we saw, yeah, Malphite and Irelia there. No cards. They're better because cards. Come on, come on. Oh, look, they made a post for the trailer. Ah, something to read. Empires rise and empires fall. Time marches ever forward to an inevitable fate. Or does it? Guardians of the Ancient, the next expansion for the Empires of the Ascended set, challenges that notion. If you don't like your fate, just pick a new one. Guardian. What? Wait, there are new cards. Wait, hang on. Guardians of the Ancient. Yeah, I'm just gonna scroll down. Who cares? We don't need to actually read. There's cards. Wait. Wait, we're right. The believers win. The copium prevails. All right, Clockwork Curator, a 2-mana 2/2. Advance an allied landmark 2 rounds. Okay. I don't know if there's going to be any use on that for anything we've seen. Chip, a 1-mana 1/1. Once you've summoned a landmark this game, grant me +2/+2. So this is retroactive. You can play this on turn 1 into a landmark on turn 2. You can play this on turn 2 after you've played a landmark on turn 1, presumably. That's actually really not bad. Blade... And this one's Ionian. Obliterate me when I leave combat. So we know that they're teasing Irelia. They're teasing Irelia. This is a token card. This is not main deckable. But Irelia will actually have a mechanic that basically summons these blades during combat. That's pretty cool. That's really, really, really interesting. So it'll be... I mean, who knows exactly what it'll be looking like, but something kind of like Elise, except it'll have, like, blade synergy, right? Like, Irelia in League of Legends summons a bunch of blades and then does things with them. So, presumably, when you have a bunch of blades, you'll be able to... there will be some kind of interaction when a lot of blades are on the board. Yeah, it'll be good with field musicians as well, potentially. Because, you know, field musicians is also an Ionia. It's potentially the perfect match for Blade, depending on how Irelia wants to play. Keep in mind, these are all from 3 different regions. God, this is an interesting teaser. They haven't done one like this before. Basically, they're just showing us, like, a couple of little cards. This one's really interesting, because Blade's not even a card. They're just hinting at what Irelia might do, right? And then there's Chip, which is pretty good. Clockwork Curator, which is, you know, a little bit weak. So this makes a lot of sense. They give us a Targon card, which looks pretty good. A Shurima card, which we're struggling to find a way to use. And an Ionia card for, you know, all the Ionia copiums out there, you know, just in case anyone, you know, something for us to latch on to. For the Irelia will save Ionia. You know, just in case. All right. This is actually quite interesting. I mean, there's not much to say about these 3 cards. They're just like tiny little cards. What else am I missing? Because is Chip... we can break this down. Chip could actually be potentially quite nuts. I don't know if... I think the biggest problem with Chip is that it's in Targon. And I'm not sure if Targon's going to want to this kind of card. I think a lot of people, when doing card evaluation, are just like... Yeah, even when cards are already in the game, a lot of people really underlook like whether it fits into its region or not. Like people go really, really hard on comparing cards outside of different regions, when in reality it's just like the card is better if it's in a region that's better for it, right? And like Chip, this would be a good card if it was like a Shurima card. As a Targon card, like a 1-mana 3/3 that's conditional on a landmark, I'm not sure if that's how Targon's going to want to play it, you know, depending on how it goes. Malphite is Targon. Malphite might be Targon, for sure. It's 100% for Malphite tech. There's definitely going to be some more landmarks that will make this a little bit better. And there will probably be like a Targon Shurima deck that actually tries landmarks. Could be a reason to be in Targon for a second region for a Shurima landmark deck. But for the most part, it definitely doesn't look bad. Like, just the, you know, 1-mana 3/3 in general is something that's had a pretty good success rate in Runeterra. Like, Jagged Butcher and Bark Beast are both conditional 1-mana 3/3s. And this one's not that hard of a condition. You kind of have to be in Shurima, I think. So, Chip's looking pretty good. Okay, am I wrong about Clockwork Curator? Is there actually any way to use this card? I mean, obviously, we haven't seen a ton yet. We don't know all the synergy points. There will have to be some kind of allied landmark that you want to accelerate right away. Because, I mean, when you compare it to Esteemed Hierophant, Saltspire. So you can play Saltspire on turn 2, and then Clockwork Curator will insta-level it on 3. If Curator was a 3-mana card, it would make more sense. Chip basically confirms Malphite isn't Targon. Yeah, it does definitely very much hint at that. Thank God we're getting more Targon cards, am I right? Remember, fate is what you make of it. See you tomorrow for the first champion reveal of Guardians of the Ancient. Alright. That's pretty interesting. So we have no idea what champion that's actually going to be, because they're basically giving us support cards for effectively 3 different champions right here. They're doing a massive troll. I mean, it could be Zilien since he was the one in the trailer, but I think if anything, it's more likely Irelia. I don't know. I mean, it really could be anyone. Okay, Guardians of the Ancient, 42 new cards, including 3 new champions. Keep an eye on Mobalytics and Deck GG. So, yeah, they're doing basically the same exact thing. And you know what that means, guys. You know what that means. If the reveals are coming in through Mobalytics, we might be able to time travel them. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, this again. All right. But that's, I mean, there's still not a ton to break down today. This is all I can't milk these cards anymore. That's Curator, Chip, and Blade, and we're gonna have to wait until tomorrow for hopefully the Irelia reveal. I'm actually probably most excited for Irelia, just because, I mean, I really, honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you. The biggest reason I'm excited for Irelia is because I really just want to see the levels of Ionia Copium in chat, because I can already imagine. I can already imagine the kinds of things that people will say.
WTF bro no new. Monkey. Bomb. Card. Straight whack.
Yeah, I agree. Alright. What are we missing, guys? I need to, honestly, today's reveals are a good practice for me being a professional milker. Because I'm gonna be honest. I mean, there's really not much to say about these 3 cards, but I think we can milk them a bit more. Clockwork improves Mono Shurima? I'm pretty confident you would not run Clockwork in Mono Shurima. I don't see why you would. It's very possible that Shurima will get some landmark that makes Clockwork runnable in Mono Shurima. I mean, why would you, what's the point of running a 2-mana 2/2 advance and allied landmark 2 rounds? Because you don't even run Esteemed Hierophant in that deck. And Esteemed Hierophant is pretty much better than Curator. So Chip is related to landmarks, and he's part of Malphite's kit, so Malphite has landmark synergy? Yes. Malphite is going to have landmark synergy. Guys, here's how it's going to work. Malphite is going to be the landmark card for Targon Shurima. This is something that I think we can say pretty confidently. Okay. Malphite is a landmark. So again, keep in mind, guys, the way Runeterra devs design archetypes here is pretty straightforward. They want every archetype to be a combination of 2 colors, right? So like, you know, we've got the like Vlad is Freljord plus Noxus. We've got Nightfall is Targon plus Shadow Isles, and there's a champion in Targon and there's a champion in Shadow Isles that merge the 2, right? It's like an arranged marriage. And Malphite is looking like he's getting an arranged marriage with Talia. It looks like they're shipping them. Okay? Almost certainly. Because yes, we saw Malphite in the trailer, and yes, Chip is a Targon card here, and it's got landmark synergy, right? So I'm thinking it's very, very likely that, yeah, Malphite will be in Targon, and he will be the partner to Talia, which is to say, like, specifically, he will be designed to work with Talia in some way as, like, the landmark deck, right? Okay. Not just Talia, but also Zilien, since time cards are Zilien related. Yeah, time cards are, I guess, kind of Zilien related. We saw Malphite defending Ionia, so he might work with Irelia too. So it's very possible that Malphite might work with Irelia too. That's might be a bit of a stretch. But yeah, no, it's not impossible. Blade is not ephemeral for some reason. It can probably spawn on defensive turns. So that might be true. That might be the best guess. The fact that Blade isn't ephemeral. I don't know if it means, like, yeah, it can probably spawn on defensive turns. It's probably like summon a Blade every time I play a spell, or summon a Blade at the start of every turn, or something like that. That could be cool. What do you guys think? Could it be possible that it's summon a Blade every time I play a spell? Because, I mean, Ionia is supposed to have a lot of spell synergy. Maybe it's because ephemeral kills them instead of obliterating. I think there's a few reasons for it. It has to summon them in combat already, no, with this wording. It might imply that a bit, but I certainly wouldn't assume that. I don't know. I mean, I think this wording would be fine if they just summoned randomly and then when they entered and left combat, they were obliterated. Like, wouldn't that be how you'd word them? Obliterate me when I leave combat? That's still how I'd word them. Curator might make Blighted Ravine even harder to play around. Clockwork Curator. I mean, that's definitely interesting. So, Clockwork Curator is probably the most scalable out of these. Clockwork Curator. So what's a landmark that we can actually accelerate? Because, yeah, I mean, I could see Blighted Ravine. That's kind of interesting. I mean, but what else can we do? Because Esteemed Hierophant isn't really ran in anything, even Mono Shurima, which is kind of crazy. And Curator, I mean, you can try running Curator with like a Frozen Thrall style deck. It has a Frozen Thrall as a card needs more help, but it's not impossible. It needs something that has a crazy impact on flip. Yeah, basically. And the problem is I can tell you right now, I'm sure that wait, that wasn't the right one. Why is this one up? That one's from ages ago. I can tell you right now, Clockwork Curator isn't going to be enough of a reason to be running Hibernating Rock Bear, right? Being able to play Hibernating Rock Bear on turn 2 into Clockwork on turn 3 isn't even very good. It's probably a lot worse than it seems. You're playing, like, one of your 2 mana cards is a 5/4, but it comes out on turn 3, which is awkward, and it requires you to play off curve, which you're not always going to want to do. It requires you to obviously have both of them for them to redeem each other, which is the biggest problem. And on top of that, I mean, a 2 mana 2/2 is just a really weak stat line. At 2 cost, the Curator is awkward with the current landmarks. Yeah, exactly. Like, the fact that Esteemed Hierophant isn't seeing play in a lot of these positions is kind of... Clockwork Curator isn't going to start seeing play for the same reasons. But, I mean, what we can assume is there's going to be some kind of Zilien card, some kind of, like, landmark that you really do want to accelerate, or maybe Zilien will work off of acceleration in some way. We know that Zilien will have some kind of ability to accelerate countdown. Almost certainly. It's almost 100% because that's just like, that's just how he works in League, and it would make way too much sense for him to not advance countdowns in some way. So it's also possible Zilien like levels off of advanced countdowns or something like that, which, you know, if that could be the case, then that could definitely lend some credence to Clockwork Curator as well. What if Zilien makes his own landmark that levels on flip? Zilien will probably have an alternate win con as a landmark. It could be an alternate win con in some way. Zilien will skip turns. I think I would actually be pretty surprised if... So, in Legends of Runeterra, in card games in general, there's always, like, time manipulation mechanics, and they're always kind of the most, like, fundamentally broken concepts known to card games, like skipping a turn, like skipping the opponent's turn or something like that. If I would be surprised if they do that here, because Legends of Runeterra doesn't really like scalable concepts. If they are going to make it happen, Zillien's going to be like really, really heavy on mana or really, really hard to level up or something like that. People really during reveal seasons, there's two things people have to keep in mind, and we're going to cover those now because there's not a lot else to talk about today. I'm going to be fucking honest with you. So we're going to prepare ourselves mentally for reveal season. The two rules of reveal season. Okay? The two big ones. So, number one, you guys have to understand, and this is like a much bigger impact than anyone gives it credit for. The region something's in matters like a shit ton. Like way more than people think. I think a lot of people look at cards and, you know, you can look at Chip and you can be like, well, it's a 1 mana 3/3 conditional, and that makes sense. And, you know, it's going to, you know, we've seen conditional 1 mana 3/3s be good in the game before. But like at the end of the day, if this isn't the kind of thing Targon wants, then it's not really going to be played. Now, of course, that's entirely contingent on its merger with Shurima, right? Because, again, presumably Chip is meant to be ran in a Shurima X Targon, or, you know, Talia X Malphite archetype. And it definitely might be good there, but that we have no idea. We have no way of being able to see. So we have to think about like what we actually have. Think about it like, you remember this card, Starry Scamp? It's kind of a similar thing going on, right? I was looking at this card and I was thinking about it. I was like, why did people stop playing this card? And I mean, the answer is pretty obvious. There's a couple of reasons, but yeah, I mean, it's not really the kind of thing that Targon wants, right? You don't really play for like cheap tempo. It was played quite a bit in the first, like, it actually lasted like 2 or 3 weeks, and then it just got cut. Like, no, I haven't seen this card since like 3 weeks after it came out. And I mean, this is a card that would, like, the idea of a conditional 0 mana 2/2 would make a lot more sense in a different region, right? There's so many cards in this game that are inherently good, but just kind of like in the wrong region, right? Like, I mean, we were looking at like Quicksand before, right? Quicksand is another example of a card that, you know, when Quicksand came out, a lot of people were comparing it to Flash Freeze, and it is definitely, you know, it's like a side grade to Flash Freeze, but Quicksand coming out made me realize how bad Flash Freeze would be if it was in like most other regions, right? Like, actually, imagine these cards existing in different regions. There's a lot of cards that make sense purely just because of the region that they're in, right? And because they mesh in the strategy in the region that they're in. Like, so I was in a Discord call. In my Discord last night, we were talking about dumb deck ideas. And we were talking about Ghost, and we were talking about Sumpworks map. There are exactly 10 of you guys that might have been in the call that will actually remember this. And, I mean, people were talking about like, oh, but the permanent effective map is elusive. Oh, but the fact that Ghost is 1 mana cheaper matters. None of that matters. Literally, that isn't even part of the equation. Like, they're the same card, and if you want your deck to be in PNZ, you take Sumpworks map, and if you want your deck to be in Ionia, you take Ghost. Period. Like, there's no reason to even compare the cards. Because, like, they're different, but it's not like one is better than the other. It's that You either want this effect in PNZ or this effect in Ionia. Like, that will always be the case. There will never be a case where, I mean, it would literally have to be if your deck happened to already be in both of the colors. If it was already, without going out of your way, a deck that was in PNZ and Ionia, then you'd be able to choose which one you like more. But that's the only case. And that's a really important mentality to have, because there's so many cards. What are some good examples, guys? I actually want to talk about this, because there are some really good examples of cards that exist in the game that are kind of only good because of the region that they're in, and that they fit so well the region that they're in, and that there's cards in the game that would actually literally, shockingly, see basically zero play in the region. Spiritfire is a good example, because Spiritfire, of course, in the counter, Spiritfire is, it looks like a good card, but in Shurima, it doesn't really have like what Shurima wants to do. And now you guys might say, well, I mean, it's also that it ended up just being worse than Withering Wail or something. And that, I mean, that might be true as an argument. It's possible. I think the bigger thing is just that, yeah, Shurima doesn't really want this kind of ability. Single combat is a great example. Single combat would be dog shit in most other regions in the game. Literally most, right? That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it's so important to look at cards like this, right? And to look at cards as just like what region they're in. I made a comment. This was I think like 3 months ago. This was actually before Rearguard got buffed. Remember when Rearguard was a 1/3 can't block? And I made a comment back then that I think Legion Rearguard is a better card than what the fuck was the Shurima one called? Bloodthirsty Marauder. I said I think Legion Rearguard is a better card than Bloodthirsty Marauder. And a lot of people literally were like, that's stupid. That can't possibly be true. Bloodthirsty Marauder can block, idiot. And like, I mean, don't get me, by the way, I still stand by that. Obviously, again, this is a comment referring to when Legion Rearguard had 1 health. And I still stand by that. This is what the region difference is. Like, Legion Rearguard at 1 health is still going to be a decent card. At the end of the day, the region that you're in will matter a lot more than, like, you know, a simple upgrade or as simple, you know, like little things that don't matter. Because Noxus really wants like an aggro 1-mana card, and Shurima kind of doesn't, right? I mean, Bloodthirsty Marauder is a card that you're not going to run in any deck. Like, when you take an average Shurima deck and put in Bloodthirsty Marauder, it'll make it worse. If you took a Noxus deck and put in Legion Rearguard, even at 1 health, again, back then, it would be fine. It would just be a slightly worse 1-drop, but you're already in that. So that's something that's really, really important to understand. Like, the region difference of cards matters so much. So much. Okay? Like, Star Shaping might be a much more awkward card in other regions. The synergy ones are kind of like hard to, it's hard to actually like look at them in a vacuum, because like this has Celestial card synergy, and that's, you can't really imagine all the Celestial synergy in another region, but like obviously without the synergy it would be worse in other regions. But just like this kind of identity of card being like, you know, that exact timing of the game, the heal plus the outgrind. Like, in a lot of other regions, you wouldn't have the early stabilization required to make sure that Star Shaping will always keep you alive against aggro. But Star Shaping is kind of like, it's not even like the first line of defense against aggro. It's just like after, you know, you've stopped their early game with like, you know, Fangs and Solar Sunforger and whatever else. Okay. This concept really shines when you say put X card in Bilgewater. Well, that's, yeah. Holy shit, you know what? That's actually kind of big brain, you're right. Hey, I'm Bode. That's great. This concept really shines when you say put X card in Bilgewater. That's fucking true. Like, imagine Star Shaping in Bilgewater. Wait, that's a really good way to think about it. Like, man, poor Bilgewater. But again, this brings me back to looking at Chip, because it's really important. You have to be looking at cards in this way. Like, look at Chip again, you know? Like, yes, it's a conditional 1-mana 3/3, which is pretty good. But in Targon, right now, that wouldn't hit any decks. And again, it will presumably make sense in the one deck they designed it for. And that's something that we just have to wait and see how it'll work out. That will be the Talia Malphite deck. But looking at chip, I can say pretty confidently, I don't see high odds of this being great outside of those very specific synergy cards. And it'll probably only be like 1 or 2 synergy cards. So that's a really, really important perspective. What are other 2 rules of a real season? So rule 1, region matters literally more than anything. Like shockingly more than anything. And we had some pretty good examples of that. I do want to like list out examples because, you know, I don't want to forget, because I'm going to have to explain this all again, like, you know, 6 months from now for sure. You know, rear guard versus bloodthirsty marauder. And a bunch of, yeah, single combat. Yeah, single combat just being a great example. Like flash freeze, I think even. Although, I mean, flash freeze would hit like half the decks in the game. But yeah, I mean, that's the biggest trap that people make when, you know, looking at new cards, right? Now you might say, well, Swim, if you're aware of this trap, then how come you got fooled? Because, I mean, I also thought that Quicksand would be decent, and I also thought that Spirit Fire would be decent. I thought that both those cards would be at least decent. I mean, there's 3 reasons for that. First of all, we didn't exactly know what Shurima's identity would be at that point. So, I mean, it wasn't necessarily clear whether they would fit in or not. And second reason, I mean, yeah, I was just wrong, honestly. And the third reason is the rule number 2, actually. Which, to be honest, I mean, the more I'm thinking about it, rule number 2 it's very related to rule number 1. They are interrelated, but still distinct concepts. Okay. Here's the second rule of reveal season, guys, which is something I've said a few times, but vacuum value is a joke. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of people evaluate cards in a vacuum. What's the takeaway here? That people want to know whether a card is going to be good or bad, but in reality, cards aren't good or bad. They see play based on whether they have a deck or not, whether their archetype is good or bad, and whether their home, in terms of like their position in the meta, their 2 regions are good or bad. That's pretty much it. A card can be bad and make a lot of sense, and a card can be good and make no sense. And that is only if we're using the terms good and bad to refer to this idea of like vacuum value, which is like a generalization. It's really, really hard to lend much value to it. But basically, this is a lot of what happened with LeBlanc and stuff like that.